His final $2 bought an unwanted girl. What happened next no one saw coming. Ethan Walker had not planned on his life falling apart so suddenly. Just a year ago, he had been running his father's small repair shop, fixing engines, bicycles, and anything that needed careful hands and patience. The shop was quiet but steady, and it gave him a sense of purpose. People trusted him because he was honest, hard-working, and never took shortcuts. But life had a way of twisting unexpectedly. It started when the local factory closed. Many people in town lost jobs, and business at Ethan's shop slowed down. Fewer cars needed repairs, fewer people could afford even small jobs, and bills began to pile up. Slowly, the steady rhythm of his life turned into worry, then fear. He tried to keep himself going, doing odd jobs, borrowing a little from friends, but it never seemed to be enough. One by one, his friends moved away, looking for better opportunities, and Ethan stayed behind, trying to survive. One cold, windy morning in late October, Ethan woke up in his small apartment above the shop. He hadn't had a good night's sleep in weeks. His stomach rumbled with hunger, and he could hear the wind pressing against the thin walls like it was trying to get inside. He counted his money carefully, as he did every day. There were 2 crumpled $1 bills in his pocket, and that was it. $2 to last him until the next day if he was lucky. That was not even enough to buy a proper meal, but there was no one to borrow from and no work guaranteed. Ethan pulled on his worn-out coat, tightened the scarf around his neck, and stepped outside into the gray, quiet streets. The town was unusually still that morning. Most people had left for better-paying jobs elsewhere. A few neighbors passed him by, nodding politely, but no one stopped. The shops that were still open had doors that barely swung on their hinges, creaking whenever someone entered. The town itself felt tired, old, and forgotten, just like Ethan felt inside. To distract himself from hunger and hopelessness, Ethan decided to visit the weekend flea market at the edge of town. It was small, with only a handful of stalls, but sometimes people sold useful things for cheap. Mostly it was old books, clothes, and broken toys. The walk there gave Ethan time to think. He thought about the bills he couldn't pay, the fridge that was almost empty, and the memories of happier times when the shop was full of customers, laughter, and the smell of oil and grease. As he approached the far end of the market, he noticed a small crowd gathered near some old, unused livestock pens. Curious, he walked closer. Voices were raised. A man was arguing loudly, shaking his finger, while a girl stood beside him, looking small, scared, and tired. Ethan could see her face clearly now. She had dark circles under her eyes, messy hair, and clothes that were too thin for the cold. She was thin, almost fragile, and her hands trembled slightly. It was obvious she had been crying. The man was shouting about how the girl was worthless and nothing but trouble. People whispered among themselves, shaking their heads in disapproval. Some looked away, pretending not to notice. Others looked uncomfortable, unsure of what to do. The man's voice was loud and harsh, echoing across the empty pens. "I've done everything for her, and this is how she repays me," he yelled. Ethan stopped for a moment, hidden in the back of the crowd. He felt a pang of sadness in his chest. Something about the girl made him stop, thinking about his own troubles for a second. He watched her, silent and still, except for the occasional swallow or blink. She didn't fight back. She didn't shout. She just stood there, looking like she had given up entirely. Then the man did something that made the crowd gasp. He said, almost jokingly but cruelly, "If anyone thinks she's worth anything, take her. $2, that's all." There was a stunned silence. Ethan blinked, unsure if he had heard correctly. $2, could anyone really? But the man's expression made it clear he meant it. He waved his hand as if saying, "Take her or leave her. I'm done." The girl looked down at the ground. Her eyes were full of sadness, but also something else, a spark of hope that had been buried for a long time. She didn't protest, she didn't move, she simply waited. Ethan's heart began to beat faster. $2. That was exactly the amount he had in his pocket. It was all he had left in the world. And yet, as he looked at her, he felt something stir inside him that he hadn't felt in a long time. It was a strange, quiet certainty. Something told him that he could not leave without helping her. He didn't fully understand why. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was compassion. Maybe it was the faint hope of connection that he hadn't realized he was missing. He stepped forward, his hands trembling slightly as he reached into his pocket. People in the crowd whispered and looked at him in disbelief. Ethan could hear them thinking, "Is he crazy?" He has nothing, but he ignored them. The words that came out of his mouth surprised him even more than anyone else. "I'll take responsibility," he said quietly. The man looked at him, then shrugged. He collected the $2 and walked away, leaving the girl standing with Ethan. The crowd slowly dispersed, muttering under their breaths. No one congratulated him. No one stopped to ask questions. It was as if the town itself wanted to forget what had just happened. Ethan looked down at the girl. She stared back at him silently, her lips trembling slightly. He could see fear and relief in her eyes. She didn't speak. He didn't speak. Neither of them knew what to say. The market, once lively, was now quiet again. The wind blew through the pens, and the smell of old straw mixed with dust. They began walking back toward Ethan's apartment. The girl, who had said nothing, finally whispered her name, Lily. It was soft, barely audible. Ethan nodded, trying to smile, though he felt unsure of how to. The walk was awkward at first. Lily held her small bag close to her chest. Ethan kept glancing at her, unsure if she would run away, unsure if he could even take care of her. The streets were empty, the buildings gray and worn, the air cold and sharp. It was not a welcoming place. But somehow, as they walked together, the world felt slightly less lonely than it had an hour ago. When they arrived at his apartment, Ethan opened the door and motioned for her to come inside. The small apartment was cluttered but warm. The heater squeaked, the floorboards creaked under their feet, and the smell of old furniture filled the air. He offered her the small bedroom, the only proper room in the apartment. He would take the couch. Lily nodded silently, still cautious but curious. That night, Ethan lay on the couch, listening to the sound of Lily arranging the few belongings she had brought. He thought about the $2 he had just spent. It was everything he had left. But for the first time in weeks, maybe months, he didn't feel completely alone. He wondered what the future would hold. Could he take care of her? Could he manage to survive himself while looking after another person? The questions circled in his mind, but beneath the worry, a quiet feeling grew, the feeling that he had done the right thing. That maybe in a world that had forgotten kindness, he had remembered it just in time. Lily lay on her new bed, staring at the ceiling. She had no words for what had just happened. No one had ever chosen her before. No one had ever stepped forward when she felt unwanted. And yet here was this man, a stranger, who had risked everything to take her in. She didn't understand why, and maybe she never would. But for the first time in her life, she felt that she might have a chance. Outside, the town went on with its quiet, gray life. People walked past without noticing the small apartment where two unlikely strangers were beginning a new story. They didn't know that what had started with $2 would soon grow into something far bigger than either of them could imagine. But inside, warmth slowly spread through the small rooms, a warmth that came not from money, not from food, not from comfort, but from trust, courage, and the small, brave act of believing that someone else's life was worth more than nothing. That night, Ethan drifted off to sleep on the couch, exhausted but strangely at peace. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. He didn't know if he would find work or food or even enough money to pay the rent. But he knew that he had done something that mattered. He had chosen humanity over fear. And somewhere in the quiet of the apartment, Lily slept as well, her first peaceful sleep in a very long time. And so began the story of Ethan and Lily. A story that started with $2, with uncertainty, with a cold autumn day, but also with a small, shining choice that neither of them would ever forget. The first few days after Ethan took Lily home were quiet, almost painfully so. Neither of them knew exactly how to act. Lily had spent most of her life being unwanted, told that she was a burden, and now suddenly she was in a place where someone actually cared for her. She did not know how to respond to kindness. She flinched at sudden movements, whispered when she spoke, and hugged her small bag to herself as if it were a shield. Ethan, on the other hand, had never raised a child, never even cared for anyone other than himself and his small apartment. Yet as he watched her, he felt a strange responsibility growing inside him, one he could not ignore. They ate the first meal in silence. Ethan had managed to find some bread and a few vegetables from a local market, just enough for a simple soup. He set a small bowl in front of Lily, who glanced at it suspiciously. She was used to being given scraps or leftovers. She hesitated, then slowly took a spoonful. Her eyes widened, not because it was extraordinary, but because someone had made it for her. Ethan smiled quietly at her reaction. It was small, but it meant something. The apartment began to feel like a real home only gradually. Lily unpacked the small bag she had carried everywhere, laying out a few worn clothes and a notebook filled with scribbles and sketches. Ethan didn't ask questions. He simply nodded, pretending to know exactly what to do. He realized quickly that Lily had been through a lot and he needed to give her time to feel safe. Every small step was important. Ethan's days were long. With only $2 left, he had no choice but to find work immediately. He took on odd jobs around town, repairing fences, painting sheds, fixing broken machines, anything that would earn him a few dollars. He left early each morning and returned late in the evening, exhausted, but he always made sure to check on Lily when he came home. Sometimes she would be asleep. Sometimes she would be drawing quietly at the small kitchen table. She never asked for money or help, only quietly existed in the apartment, slowly becoming part of his life. Despite the hardships, small moments of connection began to appear. One evening, Ethan found Lily sitting on the floor of her new room, sketching something in her notebook. The light from the old lamp made her hair glow softly. He leaned over to look at the page. It was a portrait of him, sitting on the couch, tired but smiling faintly. He was stunned. "You drew this?" he asked softly. Lily nodded, her lips pressed together. I like to draw," she whispered. "You're really talented," Ethan said honestly. "Have you ever shown anyone?" She shook her head. No one ever cared." Ethan felt a lump in his throat. All this time she had hidden her gift, believing she was unwanted, invisible. And now here she was, sitting in his apartment, offering a glimpse of her world through art. For the first time in years, he felt proud of someone other than himself. Over the next few weeks, they fell into a quiet routine. Ethan would go out early in the morning to work, sometimes returning with small treats, a piece of fruit, a chocolate bar that he would leave on the table for Lily. She would greet him with a small smile, sometimes shy, sometimes more confident. She started helping him with chores, sweeping the floor, washing dishes, and even cooking simple meals when she could. Their relationship grew slowly, like a plant pushed gently into the sun. At school, Lily began to face challenges. She had been absent for a long time and catching up was difficult. Some teachers were kind while others were impatient. Lily, however, had a quiet determination. She did not want to fail, not anymore. Ethan encouraged her, but he also gave her space. "You're capable," he said one evening, watching her struggle with her homework. "I know it's hard, but you can do this." One day, as Ethan returned from work, he found Lily sitting at the table, surrounded by a pile of papers and books. Her eyes were red from frustration and she looked ready to give up. Ethan took a deep breath and sat down beside her. "Lily," he said gently, "look at how far you've come. You've been through a lot, but you're still here, you're still trying. That's more than most people do." She looked at him, tears forming in her eyes. I didn't think anyone would care if I tried," she whispered. "I care," Ethan said simply. "I always will." It was a small moment, but it meant the world to Lily. That evening she worked quietly with renewed determination, completing her assignments one by one. Slowly, confidence began to replace fear. As the months passed, Ethan and Lily began to share more of themselves. Ethan told her stories about his childhood, about his father's repair shop, and about the times when life seemed simpler. Lily, in turn, shared her own thoughts, her drawings, and the small dreams she had hidden away for years. She talked about wanting to be an artist, to create images that made people feel something, even if no one had ever encouraged her before. Ethan listened, amazed at her insight and imagination. He realized that she was not just a child who had been neglected. She was a young person with a depth of understanding that many adults lacked. He began to see her not just as someone he was helping, but as a partner in life, someone who brought light into the quiet, tired apartment. One evening, Lily brought out a piece of paper she had been working on for weeks. It was a detailed drawing of the town, the small streets, the old shops, the abandoned factory, and the market where Ethan had first met her. In the corner, she had drawn two small figures, one of her holding a small bag and one of Ethan holding $2. The drawing told a story without words, a story of chance, of hope, of connection. Ethan was speechless. This is incredible," he said. "You have a gift, Lily, a real gift." She looked down, embarrassed. I don't know if it's good enough," she admitted softly. "You have to show it," Ethan said firmly. "You can't hide something like this. It's part of who you are. Don't let anyone, not even yourself, tell you it's not worth sharing." Encouraged by Ethan's words, Lily began to experiment more. She drew portraits of people in the neighborhood, landscapes of the town, and even imagined worlds she wanted to visit one day. Her confidence grew, and with it, a sense of purpose she had never felt before. Ethan, meanwhile, continued to work hard, taking on more jobs whenever he could. He saved every penny, hoping to create a better life for both of them. Sometimes it was exhausting. Sometimes he went to bed hungry so that Lily could have a small meal. Yet despite the hardship, he never regretted his decision. Every time he saw Lily smile, every time she laughed or showed him her drawings, he felt a quiet joy that no money could buy. One afternoon, as they walked home from the market, Lily spotted a small bookstore with a notice in the window. "Art supplies on sale." She tugged at Ethan's sleeve. "Can we go in?" she asked, her eyes shining. Ethan hesitated. Money was tight, but he saw how much it meant to her. "All right," he said, smiling, "but only one thing each." Inside, Lily wandered among the shelves, her fingers brushing over pencils, brushes, and paper. She finally chose a set of colored pencils and a sketchbook. Ethan watched her, feeling a swell of pride. Here was a girl who had been unwanted, who had been told she was worthless, now holding the tools to create her own future. When they returned home, Lily immediately began sketching. Ethan sat nearby, watching as the pencil moved across the paper, creating shapes, lines, and eventually a face. A face full of life and emotion. It was a powerful moment. The room, once quiet and somber, was now filled with the energy of creation and hope. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. Slowly, Lily began to open up to the world outside their apartment. She went to school regularly, made a few friends, and even helped Ethan with small tasks in the community. People in the neighborhood began to notice the change in her. The way she walked with more confidence, the way she smiled more often, the spark in her eyes that had been missing for so long. Ethan often reflected on the first day he had met Lily, on the $2 that had changed both their lives. He realized that the money itself had not been important. What mattered was the choice he had made, to step forward when no one else would, to take a chance on someone who seemed invisible to the world. That small act of courage had grown into something far bigger than he could have imagined. Evenings in their apartment became a time of sharing and learning. Ethan taught Lily practical skills, how to repair small machines, how to budget money, and how to be self-reliant. Lily, in turn, taught Ethan patience, creativity, and the joy of seeing the world through fresh eyes. They learned from each other in ways neither of them had expected, and so life went on. It was not easy. There were struggles, worries, and moments of doubt. But for the first time in years, both Ethan and Lily felt a sense of stability, connection, and hope. They were no longer alone in a quiet, gray world. Together, they had begun to build something, not wealth, not luxury, but trust, love, and the quiet power of believing in each other. Time passed, and Lily's life began to change in ways she had never imagined. What had started as quiet survival in a small apartment with Ethan slowly grew into something more, something that gave her purpose and hope. She had always hidden her talent for drawing, believing no one would ever care. But now, with encouragement from Ethan, she began to see herself in a different light. One afternoon, after finishing her homework, Lily pulled out her sketchbook and pencils. She sat by the window, letting the warm sunlight fall on the page, tracing every line with care. She had been working on a portrait of Ethan as he sat quietly reading a book, and this time something inside her was different. She felt proud not only of the drawing but of herself. She was beginning to believe that she could do more than survive, she could create. Ethan noticed the change almost immediately. He came home from work, tired as usual, carrying a small bag of groceries, and saw Lily sketching. Her focus was intense, her movements confident and precise. He paused for a moment, watching her in silence. He realized that this little girl he had once taken in with nothing but $2 now had a spark that could light up the world. "You're getting really good," he said softly. Lily looked up, startled, then smiled shyly. I think so," she admitted. I just want to try my best." "You're already trying," Ethan said, "and that's what matters. Talent is nothing without effort, and you have both." Lily blushed, but her eyes shone. It was the first time in her life someone had truly noticed her abilities. Encouraged, she began to spend more hours drawing every day. She drew the streets of the town, the old buildings, animals she saw in books, and even imaginary landscapes. Each drawing was an expression of her feelings, her hopes, and her dreams. One day at school, her art teacher, Mrs. Thompson, asked to see her work. Lily hesitated at first, nervous that her drawings would not be good enough. But Ethan had always told her that courage mattered more than fear. With trembling hands, she handed over her sketchbook. Mrs. Thompson flipped through the pages and gasped. "These are amazing, Lily," she said, her voice full of admiration. "Have you ever thought about sharing them outside of the classroom?" Lily shook her head. "No, I never thought anyone would care." "Well, I care, Mrs. Thompson said with a kind smile. "And I think many others would too. There's a regional art competition coming up. It's open to young artists across the city. I think you should enter. You have a real chance." For a moment, Lily felt fear and doubt. Enter a competition. Show her drawings to strangers? What if they laughed at her? What if she failed? But Ethan's words echoed in her mind. "You deserve to be seen, don't hide." Taking a deep breath, Lily decided to enter. She spent the next few weeks preparing, choosing her best pieces, and even creating a few new ones specifically for the competition. She worked quietly in the apartment, sometimes with Ethan watching, sometimes alone. Each day, she grew more confident. Ethan, meanwhile, worked longer hours to save money for the materials Lily needed. He bought new sketch pads, colored pencils, and even a small set of brushes. Sometimes he would sit nearby, reading or fixing small things around the apartment and watch Lily draw. The sight filled him with pride and happiness, emotions he had not felt in a long time. Finally, the day came when Lily submitted her entry. She felt nervous as she walked into the competition hall, her artwork carefully packed in a portfolio. Ethan accompanied her, offering quiet encouragement. "You've already done the hardest part," he said. "No matter what happens, I'm proud of you." Lily nodded, her hands gripping the portfolio tightly. The judges took her work, examined it, and nodded approvingly. She couldn't hear their words, but she could feel the weight of their attention, and it made her heart race. The following days were a mixture of waiting and preparation. Lily returned to her normal routine, attending school, completing homework, and drawing whenever she could. Ethan continued working hard, ensuring that life remained steady while they both waited for the results. Then one morning, a letter arrived. Lily opened it with trembling hands. Her eyes widened as she read the words. She had won first place. Not only that, she had been offered a scholarship to attend a respected art academy in the nearest city. She could hardly believe it. Ethan was just as shocked and overjoyed. "Lily, this is incredible," he exclaimed, pulling her into a hug. "All your hard work, all your courage, it paid off. You deserve this." Lily's eyes filled with tears. I never thought this could happen. I can go to the academy. I can really do this." "Yes," Ethan said, smiling through his own tears. "You can. And I'll be here every step of the way." The news of Lily's achievement spread quickly. The local newspaper wanted to do a story about the girl who had been given a second chance. When the reporter interviewed Lily, they asked her how she had achieved such a transformation. She looked at Ethan and then at the reporter and said simply, "Someone believed in me. One person saw that I was worth more than $2, and that made all the difference." The story captured the hearts of people in the town and beyond. Donations poured in from strangers who wanted to help Lily continue her education. Local businesses offered Ethan more stable work, recognizing his dedication and kindness. The town that had once ignored Lily now celebrated her. As the weeks passed, preparations for Lily's move to the academy began. Ethan and Lily packed her things carefully, choosing what she could take and what she would leave behind. The apartment felt empty as they worked, but it was filled with a sense of accomplishment and hope. On the day Lily was to leave, Ethan drove her to the city, the roads stretching endlessly ahead. The city was large, bustling, and unfamiliar, but Lily did not feel afraid. She had confidence now, built from months of effort, guidance, and support. When they arrived at the academy, Lily was in awe. The buildings were tall and bright, the studios filled with light and the smell of paints and new paper. She could hardly believe this was her new home. Ethan helped her carry her supplies to her dorm room, then stood back, looking at her with pride. "You're going to do great things here," he said. "I know it." Lily hugged him tightly. "Thank you, Ethan, for everything, for taking a chance on me. For believing in me when no one else did. You didn't need me," he said softly. "You had it in you all along, I just helped you see it." The days at the academy were challenging but exciting. Lily worked tirelessly, learning new techniques, experimenting with different mediums, and improving her skills. Her confidence grew with each success. And even when she faced difficulties, she remembered Ethan's encouragement. She sent him letters and drawings, sharing her progress and new ideas. Ethan, though proud, felt a mix of joy and longing. The apartment was quiet again, but he took comfort in knowing that Lily was thriving. The small girl he had once bought for $2 had grown into a young artist with a bright future. Over time, Lily began to gain recognition. Her work was displayed in student exhibitions, praised for its emotional depth and creativity. People admired her resilience, her talent, and the story behind her journey. But through it all, Lily never forgot Ethan. She knew that her success was not only her own but also a testament to the power of kindness and belief. One day, the Academy held a special exhibition for young artists from around the region. Lily's work was featured prominently, and she was invited to speak about her inspiration. When asked about her journey, she spoke from the heart. "I was once invisible," she said. "No one wanted me, no one believed in me, but one person saw me differently. He saw potential when I saw nothing. He gave me a home, encouragement, and hope. That simple act of belief changed my life. And that is why I am here today, because someone believed I could be more than what the world said I was worth." The audience applauded, some with tears in their eyes. Ethan, sitting in the front row, felt his heart swell. He realized that he had never truly understood the impact of small acts of kindness until he saw it in Lily's life. Her success was no longer just about art. It was about courage, hope, and the quiet power of one person's belief in another. It was about how love and care, even in small amounts, could transform a life completely. As Lily's talent continued to shine, Ethan knew that this was only the beginning. She had a future full of possibilities, a life filled with meaning, and a heart capable of giving back to the world. And it all started with a choice to step forward, to give, to believe. That small moment, that $2 decision, had become the foundation for something extraordinary. And for Ethan, watching Lily flourish, he understood that sometimes the smallest acts could lead to the greatest changes. Years passed, and Lily's life had transformed in ways that both she and Ethan could hardly have imagined. The small, scared girl who had once been unwanted now stood at the center of a bright and bustling art world, her talent recognized and celebrated. Yet even as her success grew, she never forgot the man who had changed everything for her, the man who had spent his last $2 not on himself, but on giving her a chance. The morning sun streamed through the windows of the art gallery where Lily's newest exhibition was opening. The white walls gleamed, and the artworks were displayed carefully, each piece telling a story of resilience, hope, and beauty. Guests began to arrive, art critics, fellow students, and curious visitors. But what mattered most to Lily was the figure sitting in the front row, Ethan. He had come early, dressed in a simple but clean suit, looking proud and slightly nervous. Lily's heart raced as she adjusted her notes for the speech she had prepared. It was the first time she would publicly acknowledge the role Ethan had played in her life. She had spoken about her art, her inspiration, and her journey, but this moment felt different. This was a chance to honor the man who had believed in her when no one else would. As the gallery filled, Lily took a deep breath and began to speak. "When I was younger, I felt invisible," she said, her voice steady but full of emotion. "I was unwanted, overlooked, and I didn't believe in myself. I didn't know what the future would hold. But one person changed everything. One person saw me differently. He saw potential when I saw nothing. He gave me a home, encouragement, and hope. That person is here today." Ethan's eyes glistened as Lily turned toward him and motioned for him to come to the stage. Slowly, he rose and walked forward, the audience watching in quiet anticipation. Lily took his hands in hers and said, "He didn't buy me. He didn't rescue me for money or recognition. He gave me the gift of belief, and that gift changed my life forever. Because of him, I am here today, living my dream." The crowd erupted into applause, some people standing as tears filled their eyes. Ethan stood there, humbled and overwhelmed. He had never thought of himself as a hero. He had simply done what he felt was right. And now, seeing the impact of that one decision, he realized how profound it truly was. After the speech, visitors moved around the gallery, admiring Lily's work. Critics praised her ability to capture emotion, depth, and subtlety in every piece. Buyers approached, eager to purchase her paintings. But throughout it all, Lily's thoughts returned again and again to Ethan. She knew that none of this would have been possible without the trust, love, and guidance he had given her when she needed it most. Ethan wandered through the gallery, quietly observing the visitors. He paused in front of a painting that captured the old market where he had first met Lily. The details were incredible: the worn stalls, the scattered leaves, the faint sunlight filtering through the clouds. He felt a lump in his throat. This painting was more than art. It was memory, gratitude, and the story of their lives together. Later that evening, as the gallery began to empty, Lily and Ethan found a quiet corner. She turned to him, her eyes shining. "Do you realize what your $2 did?" she asked softly. "I just did what felt right," Ethan replied, though his voice shook with emotion. "I didn't think it would lead to all this." "It led to everything," Lily said, smiling. "It led to me believing in myself. It led to me having a life I never dreamed of. It led to this, to everything beautiful in my life. That $2 was more than money. It was hope." Ethan shook his head, overwhelmed. "I never imagined it would matter this much. I thought I was just helping a child in need. I didn't know it would create all of this." "That's the thing about kindness," Lily said. "It grows in ways you can't predict. One small act can change a life forever." Over the next few months, Lily's career continued to flourish. She traveled to exhibitions, met other artists, and learned new techniques. Every achievement, every recognition, carried the quiet weight of her past, the moments of fear, loneliness, and uncertainty, and the man who had seen her worth when no one else did. She sent regular letters, postcards, and drawings to Ethan, updating him on her progress and successes. Ethan, in turn, found a renewed sense of purpose. The man who had once felt invisible in his own town now had a story worth sharing. People in the community recognized him as the quiet hero behind Lily's success. The small acts of kindness he had taken for granted became a symbol of hope for others, inspiring those who heard the story to believe in the power of helping someone when they need it most. One crisp autumn day, Lily returned to her old town for a visit. She walked through the streets she had once known so well, memories flooding back. She stopped at the old market where she had stood so many years ago, her bag clutched tightly, uncertain of her future. The memories were painful, but they also reminded her of how far she had come. And then she saw Ethan, waiting for her, smiling as always. They walked together, talking about the past, the present, and the future. Lily showed him sketches she had made of the city, her art, and the people she had met. Ethan marveled at her progress, amazed by the young woman she had become. He realized that the little girl he had once taken in for $2 had grown into a confident, talented, and compassionate person. That evening, as the sun set over the town, Lily and Ethan sat on a small bench in the park. The golden light of the setting sun cast a warm glow around them, reflecting the warmth in their hearts. Lily turned to Ethan, her eyes full of gratitude. "I couldn't have done any of this without you," she said. Ethan shook his head. "You could have," he replied gently. "I just gave you a chance, the rest was all you." "But you gave me more than a chance," Lily insisted. "You gave me belief, love, and a home. You made me feel like I mattered. That changed everything." Ethan smiled quietly, looking at her. "Sometimes the smallest things have the biggest impact," he said. "I just hope I've done enough to guide you." "You've done more than enough," Lily said firmly. "You gave me life in a way I never thought possible." The story of Ethan and Lily became well known in their community. People often shared it with others, reminding them that even the simplest acts of kindness can ripple out and transform lives. Ethan's $2 choice became a symbol, not of money, but of courage, compassion, and the willingness to believe in someone who others had given up on. As the years continued, Lily achieved more than she had ever dreamed. Her art was displayed in galleries around the country. She received awards, scholarships, and recognition. Yet she remained humble, remembering her beginnings, the small apartment, the cold streets, and the man who had given her hope when she had none. Ethan watched her from the sidelines, proud beyond words. He realized that the gift of giving, the courage to step forward, had changed not only her life but also his. He had been lonely and uncertain, but Lily had brought joy, purpose, and connection into his world. In many ways, she had saved him as much as he had saved her. One day, Lily opened a small art studio in the city and invited Ethan to be part of the celebration. The walls were lined with her paintings, each one telling a story of hope, resilience, and human connection. People from all over the community came to see the exhibition, many of them inspired by the story of the $2 choice that had begun it all. During the opening, Lily gave a speech, her voice strong and clear. This studio, these paintings, my life, none of this would exist without one small act of kindness, she said. Sometimes all it takes is a single person to believe in you. That belief can grow, multiply, and change the world in ways we never imagine. She turned to Ethan, who was standing quietly in the front row. And that person for me was him. He gave me my first chance, my first home, my first belief in myself. He gave me hope when there was none, and for that I will be forever grateful. The crowd erupted in applause. Ethan, usually quiet and humble, felt tears sting his eyes. He understood more than ever that what had begun with $2 had become something priceless. It was not wealth, fame, or recognition. It was life, love, and the unshakable bond between two people who had believed in each other when no one else did. As the years continued, Lily's career grew, but so did her commitment to helping others. She began mentoring young artists, visiting schools, and supporting children who, like her, felt unwanted or invisible. She told her story often, reminding people of the power of kindness, belief, and small acts that can create extraordinary change. Ethan, now older and slower but still full of quiet strength, continued to watch her succeed. He took pride not in his own achievements, but in the life he had helped nurture. He knew that the decision he had made with $2 crumpled dollars had created a ripple that would continue to grow, touching lives far beyond their own. And so, the story of Ethan and Lily became more than a tale of art and success. It became a story of hope, courage, and the incredible power of one simple act of kindness. It showed that even when life seems empty, even when the world has turned its back, one person's belief in another can change everything. The final lesson, one that both Ethan and Lily understood deeply, was that the value of life is not measured in money, fame, or possessions, but in the choices we make, the love we give, and the hope we inspire. A small act, a simple decision, a willingness to care, that is what creates miracles, even in the most ordinary lives. And in the quiet moments when the gallery lights dimmed and the visitors had left, Ethan and Lily would sit together, reflecting on their journey. They would smile not just at the success or the art, but at the simple truth that had started it all. $2, a choice, and a belief that someone was worth more than anyone else thought.